Jebusites, Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live by the Mediterranean Sea and all along the Jordan River. Caleb silenced the people who were complaining against Moses and said, "We should attack now and take the land. We are strong enough to conquer it." But the man who had gone with Caleb said, "No, we are not strong enough to attack them. The people there are more powerful than we are." And so they spread a false report among the Israelites about the land that they had explored. And they said, "That land doesn't even produce enough to feed the people who live there. Everyone we saw was very tall, and even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. We felt as small as grasshoppers, and that is how we must have looked to them." May God add His blessing to the reading of His Word. This morning, the sort of underlying theme is going to be change, at least in terms of what we're going to be talking about for the next few minutes. And personal change, a change of a church, the life of a church, and how important it is, I think, personally, to be able to look ourselves in the mirror on occasion and say, how did I get here? Who am I? What am I all about? What are my priorities? Do I need to make some kind of change in my life? And we've got three folks, one of whom is yours truly. But we've invited a couple gifted folks who gifted at words, I should say, and other things. I'd like to invite Maggie Roe up this morning, and Maggie's going to speak for a moment on change and her perspective on that and what that means to her, and hopefully to you. Maggie?
Awesome. Amen.
Thank you all, one and all. And thanks to you, Pastor Gary, for this opportunity to speak briefly about change and change in my life. I like to use the four large squares of a homemade quilt as an illustration of my life. In your mind's eye, think about a quilt. It may be one that you had in your family for a long time, or one that you know about. For me, there's the physical, the spiritual, the mind, and the soul parts. Today, I want to share a very small piece of the changes that have happened recently to the physical part of my life. Now, before I turned 60, I often took my body for granted. I fed it, got enough sleep most of the time, exercised, gave and received pleasure. And most of the time, it did exactly what I wanted it to do, without too much effort on my part. I've been very fortunate, and I haven't had any major surgeries and never was a patient in the hospital overnight. However, recently, things began to change. First of all, I had a lot of pain in my left shoulder, which turned out it was caused from arthritis. I have many gifts from my mother, and I'm always grateful to her, but the one not so positive gift that she gave me was arthritis. To make a long story short, I had a total shoulder replacement in January of 2009. After surgery, that physical part of my life quilt was as good as ever, so the surgeons tell me, at least for the next 15 to 20 years. The next significant change, I noticed that there was a lot of pain for me, oftentimes in my right knee. I thought, being the optimist that I am, that it was because I was driving for my job as a hospice chaplain. As many of you know, I drove to many nursing homes, assisted livings, and hospital facilities on the west side of Denver, Lakewood, Morrison, and Evergreen daily to visit my patients and their families. However, this January, I began to realize that the pain in my right knee was growing worse, and I no longer had that driving job. I started using a cane, and eventually even wore tennis shoes, even to church. Now, my mother would just not understand it all. But to my way of thinking, it's fine for other people to wear tennis shoes to church. However, it just did not suit my understanding of the appropriate church garb for me. And if you may notice, I still have them on today. Then last spring, I decided with strong encouragement from Ben, my husband and partner, to go ahead and to see our doctor. Now, many of you have met Ben. He's pretty hard to miss. He rides in a three-wheel scooter and is very aware of the physical aspects of his life due to the fact that he had polio from the beginning of his life at age 2.5. But back to my story. My doctor took an x-ray and referred me to a knee orthopedic doctor who was in the same office as my surgeon who did my shoulder. He had an MRI done and told me what my options were. None of them sounded really positive. I could start with a cortisone shot and then see if that might eliminate my pain. Well, it didn't. And then another option was physical therapy, and the last one was, oh my goodness, another surgery, more change. I opted to start with the shot. However, it did no good whatsoever. And I went back to the doctor and set up an appointment finally with him to think about surgery. I told my First Baptist choir about this decision, and they were very supportive. Thank you, folks. I really appreciate that. And Shirley, our organist, I will always be grateful for you for the fact that you had similar surgery and that we talked about her process and her quick recovery. The biggest challenge was to get on the surgeon's calendar. He only does this type of surgery twice a month. Now, he does knee surgery on the knees of our basketball team, Nuggets. And so I wasn't really willing to go with anybody else. I figured if he knew how to do those knees, he certainly could fix mine. Finally, I was scheduled for late August. Several days before, I stubbed my right toe, can you believe it, against the wooden front door when I was in a big hurry. Now that day I had on black sandals because Ben and I were going to go out for the night. And so my my toe had little protection. The pain was really great in my toe, but Ben was able to drive me to my next appointment. And the thought that my injury was serious never entered my mind. Well, just to let him know, I called the surgeon's PA on the day before my surgery was scheduled to explain the situation. And much to my surprise, he told me to get myself to the emergency room as soon as possible. Here I received antibiotics, and the emergency room doctor told me that he thought I would surely be able to have my surgery the next day. Now, of course, the final decision is up to my surgeon in the morning. On the day of the surgery, I got chucked into the hospital, went into the surgical prep room, had my leg shaved for surgery. Finally, my surgeon came in, took off the bandage on my toe, and instantly, I knew I wasn't going to have surgery that day. My toe was very big, enlarged, and full of infection. My surgeon immediately told me that he would not do surgery because the infection in my toe would immediately go to the site of my surgery, and then I'd be in real serious problems. 1 week later, my right toe was fine, thanks to the antibiotics, extra rest, and forced fluids. But finding a new date for my surgery was a problem. My doctor was going to be out of the country. I think he might have been in Haiti, but he didn't tell me for sure. And then he was booked up until after the holidays. In late September, I finally got a call from his office. There was a cancellation on October 19th, which is next Tuesday. And if I wanted it, I could have surgery then. I didn't have any trouble saying, yes, of course I want surgery. So hopefully after Tuesday and several weeks of physical therapy, I'll be finally free of pain, new change, and that will be a welcome one to say the least. The physical part of my life will be in good shape for at least another 15 to 20 years.